In 1348, during the Black Plague's outbreak in England, novice monk Osmond leads a group of mercenaries into a village of non-believers who remained untouched by the sickness. However, their journey to the marshland challenges their faith and resolve as they face a rumored necromancer. One night, Osmond awakens by the tolling of bells and checks his body for any symptoms of the sickness. Finding none, he pounds at his cell's door, calling Brother Thomas, who informs him that one of them has succumbed to the disease. He pleads with his brother to free him since he shows no sign of pestilence. Moments later, Osmond joins the others in praying over their dead. The following day in town, Osmond witnesses the numerous victims of the plague lined up in an alley. Passing by the forsaken state of the people, he enters a room and reunites with his lover, Averil, who thought Osmond had died. The monk informs her that he was confined and cleared of the sickness. Furthermore, he advises Averil to return to Dentwich Forest due to the growing threat of the plague ravaging the monastery. The woman worries that the sickness is a divine punishment for the absolution of their sins, but the devoted monk disagrees. Tear-stricken, Averil begs Osmond to leave with her, but he doesn't want to betray God by leaving the convent. However, the woman argues that they've already betrayed him with their forbidden relationship, to which Osmond doesn't reply. Before Averil leaves, she tells her lover that she'll wait for him at the Martyr's Cross in the forest every dawn. Eventually, she'll leave for good if he hasn't decided to be with her. Later, Osmond kneels and confesses that he's torn between following his lover and staying at the monastery to continue his service, so he asks for a sign which would answer his worries. Afterward, the bishop's envoy, Ulrich, and his companion soldier, Swire, arrive at the convent and inquire the abbot about the mysterious village the pestilence has not ravaged. The rumored village is a threat to the church, believed to be a sanctuary from God's wrath. To uncover the truth about the isolated town, Ulrich seeks a guide to navigate the marshland. Hearing this, Osmond immediately thinks of his lover, who just left for the forest. Claiming the expedition a sign from God, the novice monk volunteers to lead the envoy, but the abbot doesn't think he is capable. Nevertheless, Ulrich accepts Osmond's offer, who claims to know the forest and is the most qualified to guide them. The abbot warns Osmond about the vicious man, but the young monk claims that his prayers were answered. The next morning, Osmond bids farewell to his brothers in the monastery while they pray for his safety. As they make their way out, they witness the ill sight of the burial grounds of the plague's victims, whose endless piles are cremated to accommodate more bodies. Afterward, Ulrich introduces their guide to the rest of his crew outside town. They eye Osmond. Dismayed by the young man, they are left to trust and lead their journey. Then, Osmond notices a mobile torture machine connected to their wagon, so Griff and Wolfstan, the king's former soldiers, inform him of the truth behind their mission. They plan to purge the isolated town of non-believers from witchcraft and devilry, where the bishop ordered to seize the necromancer who revives the dead for trial and execution. Fooled by the nature of their task, Osmond chooses to pursue their mission as Ulrich demands God's presence among them. Soon after, Swire introduces the group of murderers and mercenaries to the novice monk, whom he claims are good people. Among them is Ivo, the soldier without a tongue, Mold, a butcher, and Dallywag, a criminal and a torturer. As they travel into the forest, a commotion in the woods stops them, where villagers prepare to burn a woman suspected of witchcraft. Osmond rushes in and tries to reason with the villagers' baseless accusations. Then, Ulrich threatens their leader, who steps away from the menacing crew. Ulrich unties the woman, to Osmond's relief. However, the envoy stabs the accused witch to death and tells the monk never to hinder their journey again. That night, the men set camp around a fire and ask Osmond what the church thought about the pestilence. The monk shares that he thinks it is not a form of God's punishment, unlike what many believed. He learns that the soldiers thought it originated from England's rival, the French. Ivo, the man untongued by Frenchmen, steps out in spite. Then, Osmond confronts Ulrich about the earlier incident in which the soldier claims he spared her suffering through a quick death. The following day, Ivo wakes the crew when he hears a group of flogging men. At the stream, an old man warns Swire to turn back as the land they're headed to is full of savages. Later, Osmond mumbles his prayers when Dallywag probes the monk on why he volunteered to leave the convent sanctuary. The monk refuses to answer honestly, so the criminal threatens to carve the truth out of him later. Soon, the group reaches a village's ruin, where burnt bodies litter the area. Suddenly, Griff starts coughing blood as the men back away from the suspected victim. Wolfstan carefully checks his friend's body for symptoms and finds a lymph node on his neck, confirming his sickness. Ulrich declares the end of Griff's journey, and Wolfstan yells at Swire, whose apathy revulses the poor man's condition. The monk takes the ill soldier, who chooses refuses to confess his sins for absolution. Mold hands Wolfstand the Misericorde, the mercy weapon used to deliver instant death. The soldier approaches his friend and immediately stabs the Misericorde to lessen their grief. Soon after, the crew reaches the cliff overlooking the Dentwich Forest. That night, Ulrich praises the young monk for giving absolution to his fallen friend. Osmond doubts the real essence of their mission, but the faithful envoy assures that the monk will retrace his words in time. At dawn, Osmond wakes to their lookout, Swire, asleep, so he sneaks and races to the Martyr's Cross to meet Averil. However, he sees his lover nowhere but her lone horse with traces of bloodied fabric. Devastated by what he sees, Osmond cries for Averil's name. Instead, he sees a group of bandits tower over him. Immediately, Osmond runs back and alarms his crew about the danger. Suddenly, they hear a horn bellow in the woods, so Mold carefully treads forward. Then, the bandits charge at them as they engage in a vicious battle. The monk hides in the cave, but an assailant sees and pursues him amidst the chaos. Eventually, the bandit stabs Osmond, but Ivo hacks the thief with his axe. However, the soldier falls back as a knife punctures his chin. Outside, Ulrich and the others finish off the brigands while some flee on the soldiers' horses. Dallywag reports that Ivo is dead, so Ulrich confronts the monk who brought the bandits to their base. Osmond confesses that he joined to meet a woman whom he thinks has perished in the woods. Grieving, the monk has lost his will to continue, but Ulrich insists that he lead them to the forest as they hear another signal from afar. Soon, they continue their journey on foot and finally reach the swamp. Recalibrating their plans, Ulrich declares to drag the necromancer to the cage, which they'll leave before the marsh. Hunted by ominous sounds, the group hurriedly trudges the land as they locate the isolated village. Then, they enter the quiet town where villagers eerily surround the armed invaders in curiosity. The village chief, Hob, welcomes the men who claim to seek refuge from the bandits of the forest. Ulrich reveals that they deliver relief to the victims of the pestilence, which Hob is unfamiliar with. Ulrich reminds his crew to refrain from acting alone as they lure out the necromancer. Hob leads his guests by the lake for them to wash, whereas Osmond keeps pressure on his wound. As the monk reaches to collect water from the lake, Averil's face emerges but disappears in a blink. Then, an herbalist, Langiva, approaches the crew and takes Osmond to tend his wound. In a hut, Langiva notices the monk in sorrow as she stirs up a remedy for his injury. She learns about Osmond's lover and tells him that it's not a sin to want more than divine love. As the chaste man unclothes, Langiva puts the ointment on the wound. To Osmond's shock, the pain immediately subsides. The monk then probes her husband's death, whom she reveals to be murdered by God's men. Meanwhile, Ulrich and his crew enter an abandoned church where they'll seek shelter for the time being. Dismayed by the sight, Ulrich approaches the young women, who hand them baskets of fresh clothes. The envoy snatches one's necklace, a symbol of the bishop's messenger, which he found in the swamp. Ulrich reveals that a party before them was sent to accomplish the same mission but never returned. Apparently, the former party had reached the marsh before they went missing. That night, the villagers gather for a feast and formally welcome their guests. Then, Ulrich stands, expresses his gratitude, and invites them to pray. However, the townspeople stare at them in silence as Ulrich recites his devotion alone. Later, Osmond sees Langiva beckon him outside. The woman leads the monk to another hut, revealing that Averil was found in the forest before she died. Mournful, Osmond uncovers his beloved, reunited at last. At the church, the novice monk kneels and pours his anger to his lord, condemning him for his lover's death. Then, he sees Averil's bloodied frame walk in and blames him for abandoning her. Then, Osmond snaps back to reality and sees Ulrich witnessing his breakdown. Grief-stricken, the monk reiterates that the village is innocent, unlike the mercenaries' claim of devilry. Ulrich reminds him to set aside his mourning heart, revealing that he lost his family due to the pestilence that the village is immune to. He then throws a woven figurine to the young man, prompting him to believe that the community indeed worships a false idol. Meanwhile, Mold sees Swire surrender to his desires with a woman at dinner. A lady approaches the bystander, but Mold aggressively dismisses her advances. Later, Osmond follows Langiva into the swamp and asks her about his lover's burial, and the woman assures it herself. She notices the weary man's hesitation to reveal his companion's ill intentions to the village, which she already knows firsthand. So Langiva asks whose side Osmond will take and leads him further into the dark. At the hall, Ulrich returns to his seat with his crew, dizzy from their drink. Arriving at their destination, Langiva faces Osmond as her fellow women in white cloaks surround her. Then, she kneels on the ground and revives Averil's body from the dead. Horrified by what he witnessed, Osmond hurriedly runs away from the necromancer and stops in the middle of the marsh. Meanwhile, Ulrich witnesses his crew fall down one by one in a haze as he fights for consciousness. Hob approaches and disarms them, threatening the intruders. In the swamp, Osmond sees the 4 corpses of the bishop's men who went there before them while the villagers surround him. The following day, day, the crew find themselves tied and shivering in a water-filled trough, while Wulfstan encourages his hopeless friends to persevere. Then, the Necromancer leads the townsfolk and proclaims the evil intentions of the Christian soldiers through the torture machine they found in the marsh. Langiva offers the soldiers salvation only if they renounce their god, but Ulrich claims none of them will succumb to her wishes. So the soldiers keep silent as Hob chooses who to sacrifice first. Despite their condition, Dallywag mocks the godless man as his defiant crew laughs with him. Fearless of death, the torturer sings as the villagers pull him out and nail him on a wooden cross, braving the pain. Then, Hob recites a ritual and disembowels him until he no longer screams. Witnessing their friend's death, Wulfstan curses the Necromancer while Hob chooses another sacrifice. Suddenly, Swire renounces their god, infuriating his allies. The villagers pull the shameless man as the soldiers watch their friend repeat Hob's words and abandon his faith. However, the villagers drag Swire into the woods and hang him to his death, contrary to their promise of salvation. Then, Langiva orders Osmond to renounce as they pull him out of the water. The Necromancer, who takes pride in converting a faithful monk, persuades him to reunite with his lover and remain in the village. Ulrich pleads with Osmond to resist temptation as he approaches Averil in a cottage. Inside, the undead woman mindlessly ignores him as she writhes from his touch. Seeing that his beloved's body has been defiled and is no longer human, he professes his love and thrusts a knife to her heart, ending their misery. Later, Osmond exits the cottage carrying his lover's peaceful body, claiming that Averil is with God, and so is he. Aghast by the monk's faith, Langiva reiterates God's wickedness to the villagers. Then, Osmond slashes his knife to the Necromancer, which wounds her face. The godless men tackle the young man to the ground while Ulrich repeatedly proclaims their faith against the witch's influence. Enraged, Langiva orders the horses to get rid of the bishop's envoy. As they bind Ulrich's limbs to the beasts, he continuously defies the devilry that has fallen to the village. Then, the horses pull to dismember the faithful soldier while Langiva orders him to renounce. Meanwhile, Wulfstan secretly grabs the discarded knife nearby and unties themselves from their binds. As Ulrich's limbs start to sever, he asks to see Osmond, which the witch allows. He orders Osmond to tear open his shirt, revealing the bleeding nodes that are symptoms of the sickness. The villagers scramble in fright as the soldier exposes their vulnerable village to the plague's wrath, delivering justice as a Christian upon the ungodly town. Then, Hob pats the horses, which dismembers the defiant soldier. At the same time, Mold and Wulfstan escape the trough and seek vengeance on the villagers. However, Hob stabs Mold, which instantly takes his life. Meanwhile, Osmond follows the Necromancer into the marsh with a sword. As the haze closes in, he cautiously treads the shallow water in pursuit of Langiva. At the village, Wulfstan cages Hob inside their torture machine while he remains in devotion to the Necromancer's devilry. In the hazy marsh, Langiva claims that Averil was not dead but merely drugged to recreate a miracle that Osmond believed to be an act of witchcraft. The woman insists that the monk killed his beloved, contrary to God's commandment of "thou shalt not kill." Langiva claims to be an ordinary herbalist and not a witch, who the villagers choose to believe and follow. Anguished by the revelations, Osmond begs the woman to revive his lover, but Langiva has no power to do so and mockingly suggests asking his god as she walks away. At the village, Wulfstan stands over the corpses of his friends and the villagers. Devastated by the madness, the soldier soon realizes that neither witchcraft nor necromancy was behind the village's sanctuary from the pestilence. The people were simply isolated from the plague's wrath, devoid of contact. Soon after, Wulfstan arrives at the monastery with a mortified monk and Hob, whom Wulfstan claims to be the necromancer despite the truth he had witnessed. In later years, Osmond resubmits himself to God and vows vengeance for the trauma he has endured, regardless of the revelations he underwent. In the middle of the woods, Osmond, carrying the bishop's symbol, seizes a woman who appears to be Langiva. Afterward, he brings her to a chamber and allows her torture to ensue. As the woman relentlessly denies witchery, others start questioning Osmond's accusations. However, the faithful envoy sees the deceitful woman's face on every innocent he incriminates to purge his conscience of guilt and shame by burning them alive.